Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I am really excited about the guest on tonight's podcast. I've got my co-host with me, Daniel, and Daniel has had some very incredible Bigfoot encounters over the years, but tonight he's going to be talking about an encounter with a creature that he thinks could possibly be a rake or who knows what. This creature followed him and a buddy of his home when he was just 17 years old. Sit outside his window, stared at him, and scratched on the window for over 15 minutes. A lot of strange stuff happens in this episode, and we're going to dive into that, and then we're going to talk about some of our favorite episodes here on Mysteries Unknown, some of the strangest encounters that have come on the show, and deep dive into some of those. This is a good one, guys. You do not want to miss it. But before we jump into any of that, if you would like to come on the show and have an encounter you want to share, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. Let's jump right into the story. Daniel, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Man, just drinking my coffee. Excited to get into this story. I know that people will really enjoy this, and I know this is one of the scariest encounters you've ever talked about, and I know it's something you probably don't share very often, man, but why don't you take us back to when you were a kid and kind of walk us through that encounter, man?
Sure. So this happened, and again, I'm not going to give the exact location. I will say Shelby County, Tennessee. And it was the summer before my senior year of high school, so it was like 89. And I went over to a buddy of mine's house, used to hang out, and his dad was a farmer, so his dad planted like soybeans, cotton, tobacco, crops like that. And his dad's farm was huge. And if I had to guess conservatively, maybe 300 acres. But like his house was right near the road. And when he pulled in his driveway, they had like a driveway that went kind of on the side of the house, and then it went out towards the backyard area, but that's where his huge like pole barn was. And then they had a really nice manicured lawn, and this lawn their backyard was probably an acre, maybe 2 acres big, and they didn't have a fence around any of their property. It went right up to the tree line, and there was like an access path or road that went down into the woods. And you'd go through these woods, and the part of the woods is maybe 5 acres, maybe. It could be less, but I know it wasn't any more than 5 acres. And then it opened out into one of the fields, one of the grow fields. And then, of course, you had a little access road that went around the field, and then you'd go down the field halfway, and there was another access road that was kind of bordered by some more trees, and then it went into another grow field. So that's how it was all set up. So when you went into the woods, you'd probably go in maybe 200 yards, and there was this old home. And it was kind of like the turn of the century type home. I'm not saying it was a mansion. I'm not saying it was a Victorian style home. It looked like an old farmhouse, and nature had already started reclaiming it. There were no windows in. There was no door on it. All the windows have been broken out or taken out. All the doors have been removed. It had a huge, huge front porch, and it had this like a stone stairway that went up. It had like pillars that went on either side of the stairs and onto this giant deck. And this deck went from like the front corner, like left corner, all the way to the right corner of the front of the house. And it was a 2-story house. And they had inside the house, when you walked into the house, you turned to the right. There was like a little stairway that went upstairs to the second floor. And then if you went straight into the house, there's like the living room. And then you went into this little hallway, and then there was the kitchen, and off the kitchen was a dining room, and there's like a mud room. And then off to the right-hand side where the back door was, there's like a little entryway, and then another set of stairs that went upstairs. So there was 2 ways of going upstairs. Well, when we went over there, and I'm not going to say his name, I'll just call him Eddie. And when I went over there, his dad and his mom were fixing to go someplace. I don't know where they were, maybe a church function or something like this. And this was like a Saturday night or Friday night. And he's like, boy, don't you got something else to do? You're always coming over here and eating my food and and I call him Russ. I go, Mr. Russ, no, I'm coming here to hang out. He goes, well, you gonna be staying the night? I go, well, if it gets too late, if it's okay. He's like, I don't care. You can say it. He goes, just don't do anything stupid, you know? And so, Eddie goes, hey man, you want to go ride some dirt bikes? I'm like, yeah. Now they weren't like big dirt bikes. They were kind of like beefed up mini bikes. And so we're on these dirt bikes and we go tearing off, not through the yard, but through a little access road and then down through the woods. And we are just riding all over the place. And it starts getting, I probably got over there probably about 1 in the afternoon. So we were riding a good 3 or 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. It started getting late. The sun started going down. So like, hey, we better get back up to the house. And we thought that his dad and his mom was still going to be home when we got back up there. So as we started heading back, we come back into the woods and we go zipping by. And for a second, like Eddie kind of slowed down a little bit and then gassed it. And I kind of looked over and I thought I saw someone or something like standing in the window of this house. So I got on it too and I tore up out of there. And I'm catching up with Eddie and we get up and he almost just like jumped off the back of the mini bike and just let it go. I thought that's what he was going to do, but he stopped and I go, Eddie, did you see what I saw back there? I said, there's someone down there in that house. He's like, I know. He goes, why do you think I took off? And so we go running in the back, expecting to see his dad or his mom, and they're not there. There's a note again. We'll be here. We'll be home later tonight or early in the morning. Here's the number. Don't call us unless the house is on fire or someone's dying. That was pretty much stay out of my room, stay out of our room. Um, just parents, again, I'm a Gen Xer, so this is in the 80s. Okay. So parents called you stupid. They called you idiots. They called you the R word. Don't do anything ard, And so, so that's what the letter was. And the last thing was like, don't let those dogs in the house. Now Eddie had 3 big dogs. One I want to say it was a shepherd mix, and the other ones were just mutts. But these were big farm dogs. Like they did not have a care in the world. So we're going around and getting stuff ready. We're going to start cooking some food, and we came in the back, and the back is a mud room. And if people don't know what a mud room is, it's pretty much what it is. You walk in, you take your shoes off, you hang your coats up, so you're not tracking all this mud and stuff into the house, into the kitchen, or whatnot. So we're in there. We kick all of our stuff off. We go walking around in the house, and if anybody's daddy out there had a chair, you knew the standing rule was do not sit in the chair. Well, Eddie's dad wasn't home, so I sat in his chair, and I kept calling. I go, Eddie. I go, look, I'm sitting in your dad's chair. He's like, man, if my dad comes home, he's gonna tear you up. I'm like, your dad ain't gonna come home till later. We'll be asleep by the time your dad gets home. So I got, as he called it, the clicker. So I got the remote control, and I'm flipping the channels on the TV, and now it's already dark. So we'd already been in the house a good 2 hours or whatever. And so I had the light on, and where I was sitting, there was an end table right next to my right hand side, and then right on the right hand side of that was the window, and it was a pretty big window. And so I'm sitting there, and I hear this noise, like this scratchy noise, like I don't know if you can hear that, but it's like a scratchy noise, like something scratching the screen outside. But I'm thinking it's coming from the TV, right? So I'm watching the TV, and I flick it, I switch the channel again, and I keep hearing it. And I'm like, what is that noise? So I go on and I'm looking and I don't see nothing. So I turn it down and I still hear it. So I turn the light off and I look and I see something like almost has its face pressed right up to the window. And oh man, I'm telling you. So I freak out, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but I screamed like a little girl. Like I did. I let out this screech, and Eddie's like, he's like, what the heck's going on? What are you screaming about? I go, Eddie, I just saw at the window. I just saw something by the window. And he's like, what? I go, man, I don't know. Its face it was looking right at me. It was looking right at me. And he's like, what? I go, I don't know, man. I said, it's right there by the window. So I'm thinking he's just going to go and kind of look out the window like this, right? No, he gets it, puts his face right next to the window, and he jumps off the window. He's like, oh my, he goes, man, I just saw something ran towards the back of the house. Dude, I'm getting goosebumps. He goes, I just saw something run to the back of the house. And so we go, and he runs right into his bedroom, and he comes out with 2 shotguns. Now, again, I'm not going to tell you, I do not know what kind of shotguns they are. He opens up the ammo cabinet, grabs a box of shells, and we start just loading up these shotguns and loading up our pockets with shells, right? Now, before we go outside, I want to say this. The time when I first started hearing that scratching to the time that I looked out that window, 15, 20 minutes. How long was that thing looking at me? And me completely oblivious thinking, "Oh, it's the TV." So, as we go walking, well, more or less running out through the back, we go out into the mudroom, and his dad had this huge flashlight that was like on a charger, and it was like a big brick. And I grabbed like a smaller um flashlight. Mine was very inadequate for what we were doing. He turned on that light, and it like the whole backyard lit up. It was just huge, just a huge like beam, right? And we hear the dogs just going absolute crazy. And these dogs are like they're not right at the wood line. They're up maybe 25, 30 feet up from the tree line, and they're losing their mind. Now, these dogs never barked. They well, they barked, but they didn't bark like this. They're, whenever they see someone new coming to the house, they would let out a couple barks like, "Hey, someone's here." These dogs were going crazy. I've seen coyotes nonchalantly walk out of the woods through their backyard while the dogs were sitting on the back porch, and they just looked at the coyote like whatever, you know. But these dogs, something was out there, and these dogs were going crazy. So we go out, and as we're getting closer, we hear this super deep. We're probably about 5 feet from the dogs. We're coming up behind them. We hear like this really deep growl, and then this scream. And I've heard Sasquatch hollers, I've heard howls, I've heard screams, I've heard mountain lion screams, I've heard bobcat screams, fox screams. I've heard all these different animals make these noises. This was nothing like it. Nothing like it. And those dogs, when they heard that scream, they turned around and took off because we're trying to get them. Like, come on, guys, come on, come on, boys, come on. And we're trying to coax them to come up with us, and they're not moving. The hocks on the back of the fur on their back was all up, raised up, and like they were triggered on something. When that thing screamed, they came hauling butt back towards us, and I turn around, Eddie turns around, and we're trying to catch the dogs. They get up, and they're terrified. They've got their tails between the legs. They're all trying to climb on top of each other to get into the house. These dogs knew they weren't supposed to be in the house. These dogs lived in the pole barn. They're outside dogs. They never came in the house, right? So as I'm running up behind him now, Eddie took off before me. So I have this little dingy flashlight, and I'd stop and I'd flash a flashlight, and I could hear something coming up out of the woods, coming up into the backyard, and I can hear it. I can hear it moving. and I could hear it making like a and I'm like, what is going on? So I'm getting ready to pop off, and I hear Eddie, come on, get up in the house, get up in the house. So I take off running, go up in the house, we shut the door, we lock it, we go around, we pull the blinds on all the on all the windows, we lock all the windows, we lock all the doors. And in our thought process, he had a set of stairs that goes upstairs. We started piling stuff up into that stairwell, thinking that if this thing climbed the side of the house and came in through a window, that would stop it from coming down the stairs, right? So we're freaking out. We don't know what it is. We're taking peeks out windows. We still don't see anything. So the next thing I remember is I'm waking up because Eddie's dad is kicking me in my foot. And I'm laying on the floor. I'm laying on the living room floor with a shotgun across my chest, and I got a big old dog laying practically on top of me. I got another one next to me. I got Eddie laying next to the dog, and Eddie's dad's chair is pushed up into the stairwell. And Eddie's dad starts losing his mind. He's like, "What is going on?" And he's like, "Dad, we saw this and this, and you guys were already gone, and it was at the window." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And we're both hysterical. And again, I'm 17 years old, but I'm probably freaking out like I'm 12. Me and Eddie, we're the same age. We both start talking at the same time, and his dad's like, "Shut up." You know, what happened? We start telling what happened, and he goes outside. He goes around to the side of the house, and I'm looking. I'm not looking out the window. I'm kind of looking like this so I can kind of see out it, but I'm not right up next to it. And his dad looks around, turns back, and comes walking really quickly back into the house. Goes into his room. You can hear him open up his gun safe. He comes out with an AR-15, multiple magazines. He's like, "Let's go." I'm like, "What do you mean, let's go?" He's like, "Show me where you saw it out in the woods." I go, "It was out at that old house." He's like, "I need to see where." So we're reluctantly going. We've got shotguns again. He gets in the farm truck. Me and Eddie get in the back, and we're trying to coax the dogs to jump up with us, and they're like, "Nope, we're not having no part of that." Eddie's dad drives, goes down, and you'd figure he'd stop right, right before the house. No, he pulls right up to the porch. And he gets out and he's like, "Where'd you see it?" I go, "Right there." He's like, "What do you mean right there? Where did you see it?" And Eddie pointed again and he's like, "Daniel, where'd you see it?" I go, "It was right in that window right there. It was on the inside, but standing looking out that window." So he loads up his AR-15, racks around in, goes into the house, and you could see him walk into the house, see him walk, and he's looking around where I said it was standing. Then he kind of looks up the stairs, goes back into the kitchen. We lose sight of him. All of a sudden you hear, "Eddie, Eddie, Eddie, start the truck. Start the truck. Start the truck." And he comes running out. Eddie's already started the truck. I jump in the back. Eddie gets out, jumps in the back. His dad slides in, puts it in reverse, almost hits one of the dogs that had come down. Now, as soon as he sees us taking off, that dog is again as fast as the flash, and he's back up at the house before we even get out of the woods. And we go up there. His dad parks his truck right up by the back. He drove through his backyard, drove right up to the back porch, stopped at the back porch, ran in the house, made a phone call. About 25, 30 minutes later, here comes this 18-wheeler with an excavator on a low boy, and he stops the guy. He says, "Just drive it straight on down to the back." Drove it down straight on the back, unloaded the excavator, took the excavator down into the woods, and leveled that house. Leveled it. And I had seen Eddie when I got out of the military, moved back to Tennessee in '96. I'd seen him. I was at a stopping off at a store, and I bumped into him, and we got to talking. And I go, "Hey," I said, "Do you remember that one summer when we saw?" He goes, "Yep." He goes, "We never saw anything after that. After my dad leveled that house, we never saw anything again." And I said, "Well," I said, "Man," I said, "It's just crazy. What do you think that was?" He's like, "Daniel," he goes, I don't ever wanna talk about this again. I do not wanna talk about that at all." He goes, "Whatever that was, man, that was not." I and I haven't seen him since I moved up here to Minnesota. I haven't talked to him. So, I don't know if his dad, sold that property or whatnot, but they said, they hadn't. So, yeah.
That is a wild story. And, I hear a lot of encounters, and you hear a lot of encounters, but that is probably one of the scariest that I've ever heard because of the fact of how close this thing was to you. Sitting in that chair for 15 minutes and this thing looking at you, that's just wild to me. But the first question, I've got so many, but the first question is, man, what did this thing look like? Did you get a really good look at some details? I mean, what did it look like?
So, it was like, now when I had told this story before, someone mentioned, "Oh, you saw gray," and the skin color was kinda like a grayish white. It was bald, like loose skin. I didn't see any clothes on it. And the face, imagine Voldemort's nose, kinda like that, big black eyes. And now it didn't like grin at me and like, "Yeah," didn't do one of those numbers, but it opened its mouth a little bit and it had like really sharp but messed up teeth. And when I screamed, it came off the window like this and started, I don't know if it walked away, because from me screaming like a little girl and pointing to the window and Eddie going and looking, it was all maybe 3 seconds maybe. And when he looked, he said he saw something walking back towards the back of the house. So that's when we didn't know if it was gonna try to come in through the back door or whatnot. And apparently it must have ran or walked out into the yard, and then the dogs saw it, and then the dogs went after it, which, if they're not gonna go after coyote, what would make them go after this thing, you know? But, I mean, they were not playing any games with that thing. They if and it must have took off into the woods, and I guess their common sense got the best of them. Their, I don't know, sixth sense, whatever, the dogs, and they stopped at the edge near the edge of the woods and like, "I'm not going in there."
It's probably a good thing that they did stop, man. And dogs have got a really good sixth sense. They can tell when something's not right. They have that, and I think God gave them that. And man, there's so many directions we could go with this because there's a lot to unpack there. But man, as a 17-year-old kid, how in the world did that affect you, man? Like I know that night had to be hard to fall asleep, but man, just the trauma of knowing that something like that was out there, man. What effect did that have on you?
Well, I can honestly tell you that every time I'd go over to Eddie's house, we never we didn't even get close. We didn't even get close. Even with the house tore down, we still never got close to the edge of the woods. We wouldn't. We would if we wanted to ride our mini bike, we'd ride our mini bike up and down the road. Even though we weren't supposed to, it was against the law. We still did it anyway because you're out in the country. No one's really gonna do anything. But we would go down because his dad owned a ton of land, and we would just go down and hit some of the access, little like access roads that went off into some of the trails, and then in some. But I mean, if we did go through the woods, they were further way down than where that house used to be, and we would peg out our speedometer ripping through those woods because we did not want. And then once we hit the trails, we kind of goofed off a little bit, but still. But there'd be times, you know, that you'd hear something in the woods and you're like, "Man, what is that?" And then you get crazy, your fear would take over you. Your imagination would just, there's like 100 of these things rushing through the woods after you, and you're on this little mini bike that maybe goes 45 miles an hour at tops, you know. Who knows how fast these things can go, but I'm just telling you, I would never wanna see one again.
No, and I believe you, man. Me and you talk every single day, and we talk about a lot of Bigfoot encounters and dogman encounters, and this is one of these encounters that you never bring up and you never talk about. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing it, because it is a very traumatizing thing, and it's not something that's really common. But I kind of bundle it into maybe the cryptid world based on the view of things and how I look at things, and I believe these things are fallen angels and demons and things like that, but. What do you think this thing wanted, Daniel? I know that's $1 million question, and there's a lot of different guesses you could take, man. But what's your guess? What do you think it wanted?
Okay, I mean, I honestly, bro, I can't even begin to think. I mean, because you think about the interaction that we had with it, we didn't. There was no interaction. I mean, if 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 a dog man follows you home or if a Sasquatch follows you home, there was some type of interaction. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, there was a conscious conscience con you know what I'm trying to say. There was an interaction between both creatures, you and a dog man or you and a Sasquatch. They vocalized, you did something stupid, they responded. However, this we just got a glance of it at first, and it followed us up to the house. Now, how long was it up there? I don't know. I only heard that scratching for like 15, 20 minutes. How long was it sitting there, standing there, looking in that window while I'm clicking through the channels and hollering back at Eddie, you know? How long?
I can't help but look at the window over your shoulder, man, and keep looking for something to pop up.
Dude, I'm not even gonna look. Listen, I can see that window, but what you have there is a flag. That's for my grandfather's casket. And then right behind that is like a picture board, and that's for my brother's funeral. So my little brother's got my back, man. So I ain't worried about it. I'm good. I'm good. But on what it wanted, bro, I don't know, man. I can't say. I really can't say. Oh, hey, was it curious? Was it just wanting to see what we were doing? No, because every single thing you hear about these things, and again, you know, you mentioned in the introduction, maybe people are calling her crawler. I've seen them called crawlers. I've seen them called rakes. I have some, the that Mel Gibson movie Signs. Honestly, if you want a really good, almost identical description, look up the alien on Signs, and that is almost identical to what I saw.
That brings up a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down, because a lot of people talk about having these, UFO encounters and seeing these creatures and things like that. And, if you ask me, I think they're all demonic. That's just my opinion. And that's, I mean, nobody knows. We're not experts. We're just taking educated guesses. And me and you see differently on a lot of that stuff when it comes to Bigfoot. But, I think, honestly, I think those things, whatever it is, thrive off of fear. And I think it saw two young kids on bikes, saw your buddy get scared, saw you look at it. And I think it just followed you to torture you, man, to terrorize you, because what else would it be doing? And it obviously did that, because, I mean, that's one of those lifelong events you never forget. It changes you. It changes your perspective and the way you look at the world. So, that's really crazy. Going back to your encounter, or I guess the encounter, because it involved, two other people. What do you think, Eddie's dad saw that night to make him come run to the house like that, and to just be so adamant about tearing that house down? Did he ever say at all what he saw?
No. Eddie's dad was a big, big dude. I mean, he was big. He was like 6'5", 6'6", easily pushing 300 pounds. And that man had hands like canned hams. Like his hands were like catcher's mitts. And he was a hardworking country boy. He was a farmer. He also was like a diesel mechanic at one time. So I mean, this was a rugged, rugged dude. And for him, it's kind of funny. It's not funny when it happened, but now I'm just thinking about it. Seeing him come running out of that house, wearing his ball cap and he had like flat-toed cowboy boots, and he comes running out. Eddie, start start that truck, and he jumped off that porch. He did not hit any of the steps. He just jumped right off that porch and got right in the truck and tore off out of there. I think if he would have rammed that truck into a tree, he would have tried to take that tree with him back up to the house. Like, he was not playing games. I wish I knew, but I'm assuming, you know, I'm assuming that when he, went back there, he might have heard something coming down that, those back stairs. Um, Knowing that no one's supposed to be in that house. I mean, no one. I mean, he would tell us a dozen and one times, "Boys, stay out of that house because you know what? The floorboards are not that good. The ceiling is not that good. You'll come through that ceiling. You know, I don't want no one getting hurt. And that, you know, everybody just stay. If you go over, if you have people come over, stay away from the house. I don't care if you're messing around the woods. Just stay out of the house." And for him to be in there maybe 5 minutes, 8 minutes tops, and he starts hollering. We hear him hollering before we see him. And you can hear him moving it as fast as he could through that house. So, who knows? And I go, "What'd you see?" He goes, "Don't worry about what I saw." I think it's what he heard. Honestly, I don't think he saw anything. I think it's what he heard, so
Well, number one, for a country boy like that to move that fast in boots and all that, and move that quickly, I mean, it had to be something that just really spooked him to do that and to tear the house down. And talking about sounds and hearing this thing, could you describe a little bit more in detail, if you can remember, kind of more about what the sounds sounded like? And it had to be pretty terrifying to hear that stuff. I mean, I know it was probably distinguishable from Sasquatch and things like that, but what did it sound like?
well, you know what the scratching on a screen sounds like, okay? And then the screen, it was I can't even imitate what the scream sounded like, but it was like I mean, have you ever heard like a cougar go, "Wow," like super high pitch? It was like high pitched like that, but it was long and drawn out, and it was all just one tone, like, "Wow," kinda like that, but again, way, 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 way high pitch, and then the growls, like, like, I can't even do the growl. I mean, I'm gonna look like an idiot, but, you know, I mean, it was a growl, it was like, super super loud like that, but a real deep, deep, like, from your, like, diaphragm, and it just came up through his lungs, and then it just that high pitch, and it wasn't like a gradual high pitch, it was like a super loud, just long drawn out, and that's honestly, I think I stood there for a half a second to a second, maybe 2 seconds before I realized, 1, the dogs were gone, and I saw Eddie take it off, and then I'm flashing my flashlight, "What's going on?" Now when running, I hear something coming up behind me, and that's when I flashed the flashlight, I don't know if it stopped it or whatever, but again, it stayed right outside the beam of my flashlight. So, but I heard it, like, you could hear it coming through, you could hear it, like, it was moving on, like, all fours. Like, it was but it wasn't, like, running like a deer or something like that. It's more like kind of like a gallop almost thing, like, it was, like, using its man, I'm trying to think. Have you seen Lord of the Rings? Remember some of the scenes where how Gollum would run? That's how I'm imagining that's how it was running.
That's wild, man. And as a kid hearing that stuff, man, you can't run fast enough to get away from that. And I believe, man, if you'd have stayed out there, you probably wouldn't be here to tell this story, man. Because I think that's just, you can say what you want about Bigfoot, but that kind of stuff, man, that's just pure evil. There's nothing else that can be.
I would try to blowed it in half with that shotgun, man. I would have been, but again, the initial shock of hearing that scream, and then seconds later realizing I'm the only one standing there, and my good buddy at the time, all I see is elbows and a light flashing up towards the house, and and then I hear him, "Come on, get up to the house," and I'm like, "Wha what?" I'd figure maybe he'd try to light the area up with a light, maybe that way we could see something and take some shots at it, but no, he was gone. But I'm not claiming to be brave. I mean, honestly, gosh, I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would have probably been up there with the dogs at the same time the dogs were up there.
As a kid, I mean, you can't blame somebody for that, man. They, for one, these things aren't supposed to be there, and then you find out that there are, and that your parents are gone, and you're there kind of home alone, and so I understand that fear. I know, like when I had my encounter at 14, it was kind of the same thing, man. It was just pure fear. Long night, man. Really long night. And so, glad you guys made it through that night. And, thanks for sharing that encounter. That's probably one of the wildest encounters I've ever heard, because that's just something like, I don't know what you do with that. But what would you say? One more question. We'll get into some other stuff. But what would you say to somebody listening to this podcast that doesn't believe in that kind of stuff, or that maybe is sitting here trying to figure this out? They don't believe in Bigfoot. They don't believe in Dogman. What would you say to them? I know me and you talk a lot, you being my co-host, but I've never asked you that question.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Again, I think this is like the third time I've told the story. And I know one other time I told him, someone told me I was a liar because they don't exist, that it's made up. And other people have seen it. Even some people said it's a skinwalker. I don't know about that. I'm not trying to convince anybody that there's something out there. I'm not trying to convince anybody that there's a 7 foot tall, 7 to 10 foot tall ape like humanoid that's running around in the woods and in other areas in the United States. I'm not trying to convince anybody that there's a wolf man, a werewolf, a dog man, whatever, that's running around out there. Okay. I'm not trying to convince him yet. I'm just telling you, this is what I saw. This is what I experienced. If you believe me, thank you. If you don't believe me, that's fine. It's an opinion of yours and yours only. I don't share your opinion because I know what happened to me. I know what I saw when I was 12 years old. I know what I saw when I was 17 years old. I know what I experienced when I was, 7, 8, 9 years old. I know all of this. It happened to me. I have nothing to gain from any of this. And for the longest time, I didn't speak about any of this until I was on Sasquatch Chronicles. That was it. And then when I listened to him, and it wasn't like, oh, I listened to one episode, I'm gonna shoot Wes Germer an email. I probably listened to, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 episodes because I needed validation. It's like, okay, here, I mean, I wish I still had the piece of paper because I wrote things down. I wrote down things that I heard, what I saw, what I experienced, and I was checking things off. Yep, 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 that all happened. And I'm like, I've got to email this guy. I got to email him.
That's a good answer, man. And because, it's one thing if you've never seen one of these creatures, but it's a whole other thing if you've seen something that 90% of the population has never seen. And maybe those numbers are wrong, but it's easy to say, oh, these things aren't real, or you're just seeing stuff. But until you've experienced this kind of stuff, for one, it's life-changing. It alters who you are as a person. It changes your life regardless of who you are. It's going to change you. And once you know these things are there, I was the same way, man. Like when what happened to me, and I finally realized what this thing was, man, I went down the rabbit hole. Same thing, man. Sasquatch Chronicles, started listening to that, and I was like, oh, wow, that rings a bell. Oh, wow, that checks off a box. For one, I knew it wasn't crazy, and two, I knew that there was somebody else out there like me that had seen something, and it helps to cope with it, to know what to do with it. And so, guys, if you're listening tonight and you've got an encounter, this is a great place to interject that. This is a really safe place for you to tell that encounter, because if you're sitting on one, trust me, it helps to get it off your chest. So email me. I'd love to have you on the show. And speaking of encounters, man, and, me and you are really blessed because we get to sit in these seats and talk about this stuff all the time. I mean, we talk about Bigfoot daily, me and you do. And, I'm honored to have, we do, man. And it's fun. And we love it. And I'm honored to have you as a co-host, man. It really means a lot to me. But all the encounters that me and you have heard, and the ones on my show, and all these different things, man, what's been the one that stands out to you the most?
Dude, it's that one, oh, I can't remember his name, where he was, I think, 10 to 12 years old. He was out hunting and he saw that fox. And he heard in his mind, don't, and then he shoots, and then he hears, shoot me. And then he has this full-on conversation with this creature. It wasn't a fox, and it's like, "Why did you shoot me?" He goes, "Why did you scare me?" He goes, "'Cause I like to scare people, it's fun." And then through his entire life, up to his adult life to where he is today, that thing has followed him and even told him, "When I am given the okay, when it's okay for me to do what I wanna do, I'm going to kill you first." That's what this creature said to him. "I am going to kill you first." What do you do with that?
I've ran that encounter over in my mind so many times, Daniel. I don't know what you do with that. And that one, that one really did keep me up. It bothered me because, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? And guys, if you haven't seen that episode, it's a North Carolina Dogman episode. It's an older gentleman, super cool guy, really great guy. And Rick, I think is his name. And we've talked since then. But, this thing followed him around. He was talking about how every time he moved, it would find him and follow him. And, innocent kid, he had no idea what he was doing or getting himself into. And this thing, there again, it affected the rest of his life. And, he had to learn to live with that fear. And he finally, ultimately said he turned to Christ. And that's what changed things for him when he turned his life to Jesus and he let go of all that stuff. And, because fear has no place when Christ is in your heart and your life. I mean, you don't have anything to be afraid of, but I've kept my mind is just won't let go of that. I'm the same with you, man. That's one who's really stuck out to me. There's that one. And then oddly again, and we talked about on our most recent live, but it happened in North Carolina again. That guy that I can't remember his name, but he got a hold of me and he was like, "Hey, I've got this encounter. I don't know what to do with it." But he was in North Carolina and saw these blue eyes. I talk about a lot on this show because it blows my mind, but he thinks maybe it was a dog man, Bigfoot, whatever. And it's just such a wild experience. For you guys who haven't heard it, he basically, long story short, is he saw these two eyes. This figure came down to his tent where he was at, cocked its head, and then came back up, and another set of small blue eyes appeared. His grandfather was with him, and his kids with him, or his dad was with him, and his kids with him. And so, anyways, these things disappeared, turned into orbs, hovered above his tent. His grandfather called on the name of Jesus, and they left. And it's that kind of stuff that I just don't know what you do with. Like, I'm other than to say that there's so much in God's universe we don't understand. But
the thing is with those blue orbs, remember those blue orbs? He saw faces in those blue orbs. Come on, man. What do you do?
And this guy was a prominent, if I remember, he was a prominent banker. And his thing was, "I want to come on your show because I need answers, but I'm scared to." Those were his exact words, "because I'm scared of the ridicule I'm going to get for sharing this story." And for him, he got answers. It helped him because if, sitting on this stuff is not good for you to sit here and feel like you're the only person seeing this stuff, man. There's a lot of things in God's universe that people are seeing, and these things are happening more and more. And, hopefully with this channel, we're facilitating some of that, letting people get that off their chest. But, yeah, man, those are two wild ones, and they're both North Carolina. I think eventually we're going to have to load up and go to North Carolina, I guess, because there's some wild stuff over there.
Another encounter, it's kind of like it's like a three-parter kind of, but this one took place in Arkansas. And when this guy was like 14 years old, his parents left him home by himself, and he goes out and looks out his backyard, and he sees this creature just step out of the woods and like, "Yo, what's up?" And then he goes and gets his dad's shotgun. It's like a little 410 single action shotgun, and he brings it up, and the creature is like turns around and then just walks back into the woods. And then another time, I think he sees the same creature, but at a different time, like in a rock quarry. Him and his buddies are out there goofing off on 3-wheelers and stuff, or 4-wheelers. And he looks up on this ridge, and here's this same creature sitting there looking down at him. And then like years later, like 5 miles from where he grew up, he's driving down this road with his wife. And out of nowhere, this white, like furry creature just literally like Dukes of Hazzards right across the hood of his car. And he's like, "What is going on?" And you know what this knucklehead did? Do you remember what he did? He went off into the woods and tried to
Started a
follow the
podcast.
guy and follow the podcast. That was you, man.
Started the podcast as
That
well.
was you, man.
Yeah, man, it is pretty wild. And you're right to finish what he was saying. I did, man. I barreled off into the woods with my wife. That's the cop in me kicking in, like, let's go find this thing or whatever. Yeah, dude, that's, it's pretty wild. And I was really afraid to talk about it for a really long time. And that story came out in pieces. But what's weird about that, man, is I didn't even remember I had buried that encounter when I was a kid, man. I buried it. I absolutely buried it until I saw that white furry, I'm just going to call it what it is, man, Bigfoot creature jump over the hood of my car. And then I started listening to Wes at Sasquatch Chronicles, man. And I kept listening and getting answers. And I was like, okay, there's got to be more to this. The wild thing about that encounter, and I eventually want to do a documentary on it. My dad, when I was just a kid, I was 5 years old, man, had a UFO encounter less than 5 miles from where I had my Bigfoot encounters. And those are things that are always in correlation. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens in that area. And one of these days, guys, I maybe we do a deep dive on it. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff, man. And Bigfoot is a big world, but it's a small world because it brings people like this, me and you together, and you never know what's going to happen. But man, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule, to for one, to be a co-host on this channel and do the lives with me. And for two, man, coming back on here, sharing that encounter, man. I know people really enjoy that. They love it when you come on, man. So thanks for sharing that.
Well, man, I appreciate it. And again, I am just honored that you, one, I was surprised. Yeah, out of the blue, man. You're like, hey, man, what do you think about coming on and doing a live? Like what? Like what? And what I remember we did, it was the full moon. It was the eclipse. It was the eclipse. Yeah, that was the first one we did. I think we only got like 800 and some odd views, like 833 views, because we were trying to have a call in, and we couldn't get it to work. And I don't know if you haven't been able to get it to work or not. So
I've never messed with it since then, man. Well, I think we tried one or two more times. You get to thinking about, do we really want to call in show, man? Because you don't know who's going to, we have no control on that or who's going to call in or what they're going to say. But, the lives have turned into a really important part of this channel, and people really love those. And, that was my wife's idea. She was like, you ought to call Daniel up and you ought to see if he wants to do a live. And so that was a great idea because it turned into a whole other thing. And, it's turned into this great thing. And I love chatting with everybody in the community, and just, it's brought a lot of people together, and it's really cool what we're doing. So, but man, thanks for being here, dude. Thanks for the support with this channel. Thanks for being part of it, man. And we'll have you back on again to share another encounter. One of these days, I want to do an episode all about your Bigfoot encounters, all of them. One long deep dive. So we'll work on that sometime, man.
yeah, I think maybe, I don't know, if people want to hear it, then yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to take over this channel. I don't want it to be, oh, look, here's Daniel again. Oh, look, here's Daniel again. Oh, haven't I heard this story before? Oh, yeah, let me go back in the archives and check, you know. But again, and again, there's only one other story on here that I've told that I've never told anybody else. And that's my military experience when I was up in New Jersey. I'm telling you, dude, if we would have had live ammo, we would have proof. We, like, legit, we would have had proof. There was like 60 people that as soon as those flares started popping off, we had blanks. I had an M60 machine gun, dude. I would have, because I saw it. There would have been two parts, upper torso, lower torso, because I'd have cut it in half. Like, for real.
That's why I want to have you back on to share that encounter, because all these encounters into one long video, because people love hearing them, man. And man, every time somebody watches this channel, it's somebody new. So we got to keep that in mind. So definitely want to have you on. And I think that, I believe you would definitely try to lay it out for sure. There's no doubt there. But yeah, people love having you on the show, man. So we'll get you back on. But again, man, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing that tonight.
I appreciate it, man. I need to get you on my channel to tell you with your Bigfoot encounter, stuff like that. So, because I already have you on there. You were like my first episode on YouTube, but because I didn't have the audio, you're like the second episode on my Spotify. So,
well, listen, I'll be honored to come on and share it. So we'll do that, and I'll come on there and definitely share it, because I need to talk about it some more. So thanks again, buddy, for being here. Guys, thank you again for hanging out with me and Daniel tonight. It's always fun when I get to hang out with him, and we love this world we're building, and we love that you're a part of it, because we couldn't do this episode without you guys. You guys are a very important part of what we do here at Mysteries Unknown. So honored to be sitting in this chair to tell these encounters. If you have got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. And listen, I say it at the end of every show, but after hearing Daniel's encounter with what he saw, that's one of the reasons I say this stuff, guys. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.